Going to just mute everybody and start recording. You can just hold tight for just a second. Okay, well, welcome folks to another installment of our ongoing series, 350, the intersection of climate and racial justice, where we interview candidates who are running for local office. Today we are honored to have Cindy Lerner, the former mayor of Pinecrest, who is running for Miami-Dade County Commission District 7. She'll be joining us. And with what we're going to do is just give her a few minutes to introduce herself, what she's accomplished in her tenure in public office, as well as why she thinks she needs to be our next county commissioner. And we'll have some prepared questions then for about half an hour. And after that, we'll open it up for the audience to ask any questions. So if you do have any questions, please type them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll get to you after we've done the prepared ones. All right, so a little bit about 350 South Florida. We're the local, or excuse me, 350 South Florida Action. We're the sort of political branch of 350 South Florida, which is a branch of 350.org, a global climate justice organization that is focused on transitioning our global economy from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and doing so as quickly and as justly as possible. 350 refers to the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that the International Panel on Climate Change scientists determined decades ago would be kind of the safe level to avoid any catastrophic impacts of climate change. We're already well above that at 420 parts per million. And unfortunately, things are still rising as far as our emissions are concerned. So, we definitely don't have a lot of time left to start drawing down that number. And hopefully we'll have some good insights today from Cindy about how we can do that here at the local level. So with that, we'll go ahead and let Cindy introduce herself and tell her why she is running for office.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Eric and Nicole and 350 for giving the opportunity to those of us who would hope to be the ones determining the policies and the investments that are critical to moving our county, South Florida, our state, our country forward. So let me tell you briefly a little bit about myself and what led me to invest the kind of time and energy that I did in trying to lead by example in Pinecrest, and why I hope to be able to do that as the next county commissioner for District 7. My background prior to running for mayor of Pinecrest, I had served as a state representative for District 119 several years previous to that. And the district disappeared in redistricting, which sometimes that happens. I was the poster child for what can happen when they draw the lines different than what the voters had expected and wanted. So I was encouraged to run for mayor of Pinecrest. I did. I was elected in 2008 and re-elected in 2012 without an opponent. So I had 8 years in a municipality that actually I had grown up in prior to it becoming Pinecrest. I went to all Palmetto School. So having the opportunity to come back as a mayor and help lead what was now a new and vibrant municipality was really very thrilling. And so about the time that I was elected mayor, Southeast Florida, the four southernmost counties, Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, and Monroe, had come together to create the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact. The four counties understood that we are ground zero for the impacts of climate change, and that it would be useful and in fact critical to try to deal with these significant, really existential issues on a more regional basis. Of course, we had very little direction at the state level, very little leadership at the state level, but at the regional level, they came together, they created a compact, and the compact basically said, we're going to agree on the science, we're going to look at the projections, we're going to analyze what best practices say we should be doing collectively to mitigate against climate change, and then create the kind of adaptive measures and investments in infrastructure so that we can live here for generations to come. So at the time, our one of the county commissioners was Katie Sorensen, who is a Pinecrest resident. She had been involved in the development of the compact, and every year the compact committed to come together and have a summit, share their successes, their challenges, bring in speakers, and address new best practices. So she invited me to come to the very first climate summit, and I did. And I was overwhelmed with the responsibility that it presented to those of us in elected office. And I took it upon myself to make that my mission going forward as mayor of Pinecrest. So I spent the next several years learning as much as I could from those who had the expertise at governmental level, at academic level, and civic level. And I had the benefit of partnering up shortly after I took on this initiative with Carolyn Lewis, who had just created the Clio Institute. And we partnered. We offered her office space in Pinecrest at Pinecrest Gardens. And it was the best decision that we ever made, because I was then able to absorb and learn at the knees of Carolyn all of the great initiatives for informing and engaging the community in understanding, first of all, learning what the science is, learning what the impacts of our very bad behaviors have been in the industrial age, in the fossil fuel age, and how we can make changes. So we partnered together. We did lots of presentations together. And then the other thing that I did to learn more, I joined the National League of Cities. The National League of Cities has a committee called Energy, Environment, Natural Resources. That seemed to be a way for me to learn about all of the good things going on all over the country, which I did. I eventually became chair of that committee. I eventually attended sea level rise and climate change summits all over the country, and in fact was invited to Beijing to present at a climate leaders summit the last year I was mayor. So we did some great things in Pinecrest. I looked around though, and I realized that many of the other cities in Miami-Dade County weren't doing anything. Some were, kind of dipping their toes in, but not really fully engaged. Some were clueless. Can't explain it any other way. So the year I was president of the Miami-Dade League of Cities, I got to pick the project that I wanted for the year I was president. So I went to my Miami-Dade mayor, Carlos Jimenez. I took Carolyn with me as my secret weapon. And we met with him, and I said to him, the climate compact is putting together a step-by-step process that we should all be following, but we as a county should be doing it together. All of the cities need to be collaborating with the county, and quite frankly, we need to see some leadership out of the county. I was watching, from having gone to those yearly summits, how much more was being done in Broward than in Dade. And it was being done because the county was working with all of the cities. The county in Broward actually has a department that reaches out to all of the cities. They meet quarterly, they bring in speakers that share best practices. So I said to Mayor Jimenez, all you have to do is follow their lead and do what they're doing. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we need to be doing a collaborative effort, and all of the cities need to know what I know and understand their responsibility to move forward, where he had no interest. It didn't happen, but that was when I said to myself, when I am done being mayor, I know where I'm going next. I want to run for county commission, and I want to be sure that as a county, we are taking it upon ourselves to assess our vulnerabilities countywide, to develop a prioritization, not just for vulnerable areas and vulnerable infrastructure, but how about the vulnerable populations? Where are they? What needs to be done? How do we invest in that, as well as the physical infrastructure, and then the natural investments we can make to provide for what we are already experiencing in rainy day flooding and 500-year storms that are coming every 6 months, and all of the things that need to be done that aren't being done. The other thing that I did as mayor way back in 2013 was a greenhouse gas inventory for Pinecrest. Now we're only a 8 square mile haven, but it was a real opportunity to understand where we could make a difference, where we could make changes. And again, I realized if we're not doing it countywide and at the county infrastructure and investment level, we're not going to make the progress that needs to be done. So I know from having walked the talk in Pinecrest that there's a very clear protocol, process, resources, and tools, but it takes leadership and it takes collaboration. So that's my background, that's my motivation, and that's my agenda for moving forward. Now, I am really happy to say one of the things that we started in Pinecrest, I started a youth advisory council early on in my term. And the goal of the Youth Advisory Council, I know 350 has a youth group, was to engage the middle school and high school students in, number one, understanding local government, how it works, how you can make it work for you, and for them to get involved in local projects. So we started having Earth Day festivals every year, and it was an opportunity for them to take a lead and show off things that were going on in the municipality and engage their peers and members of the broader community. This year we had planned an Earth Day festival, and unfortunately we were all shut down by the pandemic in April. So as an alternative, we decided to do a virtual Earth Day festival, and I asked the Youth Advisory Council if they would put together a video presentation of the progress that Pinecrest has made in adapting to sea level rise and some of our initiatives to mitigate against carbon footprint that we have way too much of. And so I'm really excited and proud that they did, putting together the process for them to make the video and present was a wonderful learning opportunity for them to really go back and look at the things that have been done in Pinecrest over the last decade. And so now we've got their video. They understand why we're doing what we're doing and what their obligation is to move forward. And let me tell you, when they go home and talk to their parents and they say, you know, Mayor Lerner showed us a picture of her standing on her roof with her solar panels and how proud she is of her solar panels. Why don't we have solar panels? So, you know, that speaks a lot louder than anything I could say to their parents. So I do those kind of things with the youth as well. So I will stop there in the overview. And I know we have the video if you want to show a little bit of it now, or you want to take questions first. I'll leave it up to you, Eric, going forward.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all of that wonderful background and your incredible accomplishments. So yeah, we'll just show the brief video of for the youth group, and then we'll go into some of the prepared questions we have. And then if the audience has any questions, please type them into the chat and we'll get to them after that. All right, so let's do the screen sharing thing.
My name is Robbie Mazer, and I'm currently... Hi, my name is Robbie Mazer, and I am currently serving as the 2019-2020 Pinecrest Youth Advisory Council Chairperson. In Pinecrest, our YAC is so much more than spread civic engagement. We inspire members of our community to take action and change the world. The Village of Pinecrest and YAC are committed to lead by demonstrating sustainable stewardship that promotes cost saving, provides healthy work environment for staff and visitors, increases public awareness of the environment and economic problems associated with carbon emissions, and establishes community standards of sustainable living practices. Now the members of the Youth Advisory Council, as well as the Pinecrest Youth Volunteer Corps, will present just some of Pinecrest's achievements to become more sustainable and environmentally throughout the last decade.
In January of 2010, Pinecrest passed the adopted Resolution 2010-1, establishing and adopting a green plan of action and sustainable procedures policy. These plans promote green procedures in purchasing, leasing, and usage of environmentally friendly green products and services. They establish a recycling program at all village parks and recreational facilities and at the Pinecrest Gardens. It assures professional development and training of village staff in sustainable practices. It proposes additional ordinances, land development, and building regulations and regulatory standards to create a more sustainable community.
In May 2010, the Village Council further solidified its commitment to minimize the community's impact on the environment through the adoption of the village's first strategic plan. On May 11, 2010, the strategic plan establishes sustainability as one of the 6 core values of the government and places municipal forces on increased energy efficiency and sustainable growth management policies. 1 year later, in April 2011, Pinecrest passed an adopted resolution accepting membership into local governments for sustainability, undertaking the 5 milestones to reduce both greenhouse gases and air pollution emissions throughout the whole community.
In December 2011, Pinecrest passed the adopted Resolution 2011-78, which urged the EPA and the President of the United States to enforce the Clean Air Act, which regulates all sources of air emissions. Then, in January 2012, the village started the Pinecrest People Mover, which is a public transit bus service which links village neighborhoods and schools. It also provides a connection to the county's public bus service. Personally, I found it very useful as I have taken it to and from school for the past 4 years.
In March of 2012, Pinecrest passed the adopted Resolution 2012 through 2014, amending the land development regulations to develop additional initiatives to conserve energy and natural resources, and to further support the Green Action Plan and Sustainable Procedures Policy. This policy establishes goals in 9 areas of sustainable practices in green building, clean energy, and transportation, for example. Later in the year, Pinecrest added on to the adopted Resolution 2012 through 2024. Expressing support for the state of Florida legislation to restrict the use of plastic bags by retail establishments. You can also see this when shopping at Milo's.
In 2012, 2014, and 2018, the Village of Pinecrest conducted the Community and Governmental Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory. The inventory helps communities throughout the country calculate their greenhouse gas emissions. The spreadsheet helps communities calculate emissions from sectors including the residential, commercial, transportation, waste, and water management. In October of 2016, the Village of Pinecrest completed the Climate Action Plan, which provides the framework for the village, its residents, and commercial sector to curb climate emissions.
Early last year, in January 2019, Pinecrest officially launched Freebie, which is a green transportation service that offers free on-demand rides around favorite destinations in the village and also connects to the South Dade Transitway and Metro Rail system. Other notable achievements seen in Pinecrest throughout the years include Pinecrest's adoption of a bike lane and route plan, US1 mobility plan in October 2015, electric vehicle charging stations in January 2014, and a community center renovation with LEED, which is Leadership in Environmental Design certification.
What do you hope Pinecrest can achieve in the future regarding sustainability? That's a great question. In Pinecrest, we hope to continue to be a leader on the sustainability front. It's critical to our community character. It's critical to our quality of life. It's critical to our economic well-being. And it's critical that we leave our children and grandchildren a world that had the same opportunities that we were provided.
Eric. I think the video is muted.
Recognizing cities and villages for their excellence in urban forestry.
There, okay.
As time moves on, Pinecrest will continue to adopt sustainable practices, leading their citizens into sustainable excellency. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation on behalf of the Youth Advisory Council, Mayor Lerner, Councilwoman Katie Abbott, and Mayor Cordino. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about some of the technical difficulties at the end there. But that video is available on Facebook, and I will go ahead and just post the link to that in the chat.
Great. Thank you.
A wonderful list of all the accomplishments. And so great job for the youth in the city of Pinecrest. So let's continue on that note, I guess. Given all of those really wonderful achievements that the city of Pinecrest has been able to make on improving sustainability and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, how would you, as a commissioner, help bring that to the county level? Just given obviously that there's a lot more bureaucracy and competing interests, etc.
Right. So, surprisingly, actually, to me, it's shocking. There is no standing committee at the county level to address climate change at all. It's folded under one of the other committees. It's not even highlighted anywhere. So clearly there has to be a standing committee that is part of the commission structure so that it proceeds to engage among themselves and with the broader community. I know Commissioner Levine Cava tried mightily to get on the agenda for the bigger committee that climate change was supposed to be under, to bring in presenters, but they poo-pooed it and just, sent her on her way, really. It was pretty horrifying. So that's part of it. It's going to take full-on engagement by the commission. I am hoping with half a new commission this year and the other half replaced in 2 years, there will be a new or a renewed commitment by the commissioners and by our new mayor to really lead and lead by example. We can't afford to keep kicking the can down the road. There are wonderful community organizations I've been part of. The Miami Climate Alliance is one of them. That's kind of an umbrella that does wonderful work, but there's no linking or liaison or engagement between them and the commission. So those are the kinds of things that I think at the structural level have to happen. There has to be a immediate strategic plan for the county for how to move forward. We've had a chief resiliency officer and office, and the staff care deeply and know a lot, but they haven't gotten the support and the leadership out of the mayor, quite frankly. So we need to really invest them with the ability to go out and do the work that we know needs to be done. We have to do a county-wide vulnerability assessment. That has never been done. County looks at little parts of the county. They'll say, let's do a study of Arch Creek and figure out what we would do with Arch Creek. What good does that do the rest of the county? Where do you identify your adaptation action areas and where your priorities should be? So it's going to take not a lot of work. It's just a lot of it is just reprioritizing and having a commitment and some leadership.
Definitely. So does the Department of Environmental Resource Management, DERM, do they have the currently have the ability to act on climate change in any way, or monitor emissions, help achieve any of these goals? Or are they focused on basically has their mission expanded to include climate change?
Not the way it needs to.
And why not?
Well, again, it's not a priority for the mayor, and they would need probably more resources to do so. They have focused more on contamination of Biscayne Bay, which is another major issue, and they are, doing what they can. But much more can be done there too, which is why there's been a Biscayne Bay task force for the past year. We are anxiously awaiting their final report. It's something that I plan on taking a lead on to make sure that we go forward and implement and invest their recommendations. But yeah, there's so much more that Durham could do. And in terms of budgeting, we need to make sure that, as was said in the video, for procurement, you can put into the whole procurement process these sustainability considerations and priorities in what they buy and how they go forward. How we ended up with compressed natural gas buses instead of a fleet of electric buses here and now, that's shameful. So there, again, it's leadership and vision for moving us forward.
So since the EPA regulates carbon dioxide as as an air pollutant, does there need to be some legislation to allow DERM to do that as well, or how would that what would be required? Or should they even have that role, or would that be better off to a different county organization or entity?
So, well, let's hope that we are able to continue with federal standards, should we say, and put more meat on the bone of those federal standards. And there are other entities that can monitor it, but the county needs to make sure that everything within its control, because it's a $9 billion budget and massive infrastructure that it does control in terms of its carbon footprint, that it can do much more. But beyond the county, we've got the tourism industry and all of our other major industrial and business partners, the other municipalities. So everybody has to understand that they individually, as people and as entities, whether it's a governmental or a corporate entity, everybody needs to understand the role to play and move forward in reducing the impact. The other major area for the county that they've completely failed is expanding transit. We'd have far less cars on the road and emissions from all of our traffic if we had expanded transit over the last decade. So that's another means for the county to advance our reduction in our footprint.
Great. Well, thank you. So broadening the scope just a little bit, obviously it's a kind of an interesting time right now. We have not just the viral pandemic, outbreaks of police brutality, and ongoing racial injustice. Obviously we're in a severe economic crisis as well. It's likely to only get worse. And then, of course, we have the climate crisis looming over all of that. How do you see these issues relating to each other? And what would some of your first priorities be, when you're elected into the county commission to systemically address them?
Right. So we used to say that climate change and sea level rise was our existential crisis that we were facing until the pandemic. And that sort of shoved the priorities for the urgency of dealing with the climate change and sea level rise. That's not going away. It's continuing, and we see the impacts of it. But I do think it has reprioritized when we have the thousands of people in Miami-Dade and tens of thousands in Florida and hundreds of thousands in this country, and what's going on worldwide with loss of life and serious prolonged illness for those who recover. That is first and foremost something that has got to be addressed before we can bring back the economy. We've got to make sure that people will be safe, because people don't feel safe. And we're not confident that we've ever had any level of leadership that we needed from the federal government on down. The inability to have uniformity and make sure that our leaders were messaging in a way that people would understand how we're all at risk and we're all responsible for each other, has taken over and is going to require a lot more engagement by local government and collaboration with our state government to do that. Couple that with the impact on the economy, because Miami-Dade has been our main economic engine for decades. For most of our existence has been tourism. And because tourism has been so severely impacted, and it will take years and years for that to come back. It may not ever come back at the degree that it was. Certainly we have permanently lost some wonderful, many of the independent restaurants are gone for good. When will people come back and take cruises again? No time soon. So from my perspective, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to retool and reconsider, and here's where the combination comes in and the linkage. The linkage is a new economy, which is renewable energy and expanding solar. I have solar on my roof. I put solar on in 2014. We've come a long way since then. It's half the price that it was. More and more people are engaging. We've got new financing mechanisms for it. But we don't have a county that is embracing it as an industry. And we should. I believe we should be the photovoltaic manufacturing capital of the entire Eastern Seaboard. Why not? Why shouldn't we be making those panels and utilizing them and exporting them to the Caribbean and South America, Central America? Why not? It's just there for the asking, for the taking, for the commitment. All of the other initiatives in sustainability, all of the challenges that we have for addressing sea level rise with the hydrology and geology that we have that nowhere else. We can't bring in experts from the Netherlands and say, build a dike, or listen to that ridiculous recommendation from Army Corps of Engineers to put up these 12 to 20 foot high walls. I heard that and I thought, these people are in la la land. They just don't understand. But here's what we're missing. we need a think tank right here in South Florida. I see all this property in South Dade, so I'm always thinking of South Dade, but we've got University of Miami and FIU and FAU and lots of wonderful academic expertise and resources that are looking at all these issues in terms of projections and in addressing at the level where we want to restore our bay and address those issues at the ground level. But what we're missing is how do we best adapt for South Florida, because we've got this limestone and water, you know, the water table is rising as we speak and taking out septic tanks. I'm still on a septic tank, by the way, and these are critical issues that nobody's solving them for us. We have to solve them ourselves. So what a great economic engine to bring in and create a think tank where we can solve some of the problems, put more people back to work, retrain in all of these new economies that I think are what we're going to need to focus on going forward. And then lastly, I would say, because of the adverse impacts that we are seeing from the pandemic on those in the most challenged, economically challenged communities and impoverished communities that haven't had access to health care and are on the front lines for many of the businesses that have either already shut down or they're on the front line for those businesses. And we need to make sure that we are putting together that kind of framework as well to shore up, provide for healthcare, childcare, and some level of living wage to provide opportunities for people to, housing is a critical issue. So they all intersect and they all overlap. But to me, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to pivot from the way we've been doing in the business in the past, the way we've been relating to all of our communities or failing to relate among all of our communities, and make for a better future in as a result of the challenge we face.
All right, well, thank you so much for that very detailed and expansive answer. There's a lot of issues revolving around that. So that kind of brings me to what a lot of groups, and nonprofits like 350 International have been pushing for, which is what they call a just recovery, in that using this time of crisis to make sure that moving forward, people aren't left behind, and that we do start moving towards a more regenerative economy. So just briefly, some of these principles that are outlined in what the peoplesbailout.org include, number one, prioritizing health, making sure that people have, free and accessible testing, paid sick leave, including all people, whether they're documented or incarcerated or homeless. Second, providing economic relief directly to the people who have been affected by the COVID crisis through, cash payments, unemployment, food and housing assistance programs. Making sure that businesses accepting federal funds have to, meet certain worker protection rules, providing a livable wage, allowing them to collectively bargain. And fourth, to invest in a regenerative economy by, not providing bailout funds to fossil fuel companies, and, starting to invest in that renewable energy and in our natural infrastructure as well, and restoring our natural ecosystem that can provide resilience. And then lastly, by protecting democracy, expanding vote by mail, online or automatic voter registration, and full funding of the census and the post office. So I know it's a lot of topics there, but just briefly, do you agree with these principles? And then how can you as on the Board of County Commissioners ensure that the federal monies that are accepted by Miami-Dade County actually go to serving these goals, as opposed to just bailing out the wealthier corporations that are usually the ones who get the most benefit out of these packages?
Right. Well, first of all, yes, I am 100% in support of and have in the past and will continue to work to advance all of those goals. I think we're seeing right now playing out some of the challenges that the county is facing in addressing the CARES funding that's been received so far. And, they're coming up with a few programs that are of immediate critical need, like feeding, providing resources for seniors and other ways to make sure that people have food on the table. But there are other challenges that I have not seen the county lift a finger. Maybe they're doing it, they're just not talking about it, but that's not common. And that's addressing, number one, the failed unemployment system at the state level. It's still a failure, and there's still people who aren't able to address it, the system, and apply. It's about to be cut off anyway without federal input. But when it first was evident that the system was broken and people couldn't even apply, you didn't see the county opening up the libraries or doing anything else to try to help address and solve that challenge. It was our state legislators who were opening their offices and saying, we're going to make paper applications available, we'll help you fill it out. But I see a role, it's a safety net issue, not just for food, but for in the kinds of benefits that have to be made available. But when you know that you're going to have, it was a big chunk of money went for the airport and major economic engines that have to have it, but for corporate support, no, none of it should go to corporate support. But it would have been, I think, a more likely successful scenario to come up with a strategic plan and look at the entirety of the challenges and the basic human needs for housing and for healthcare and all of that, and figure it out that way. The county used to have something called the Alliance for Social Services, and they analyzed, they studied where the pockets of poverty and impoverishment and lack of housing and those things were taking place. And they don't do that anymore. So this is an opportunity to start doing that and look holistically at what the needs are and the challenges are. And are there already nonprofits out there that are doing good work, that are known to have the kind of expertise and the kind of transparency that's needed to make sure money is going where it needs to go. One last thing that to me is a major priority for effective functioning of this county, responsible spending of this county, is that all of the budgetary decisions and allocations, once a budget is adopted, go back to the administration, and it all comes out of the mayor's office. You don't know where the money's hidden under which rock and which stone and which hole you have to go down to find it, because the county commission does not have its own appropriations staff. When I was in the legislature, the governor would adopt a budget, propose a budget, give it to the legislature, and each department, whether it was criminal justice or environmental or any other aspect of state government, has an appropriation staff, and they would take the budget and drill down and see where the money went, whether it was spent where it was supposed to be spent, whether it was being well spent. There were agencies that would analyze that. We don't have any of that at the county level. So, you know, you write a blank check to the mayor, and the mayor does whatever he wants. And we've seen it over and over and over again with this mayor, where one day we had billions of dollars for transit expansion, and the next day we had none. So we can't continue that. Whether this mayor is gone or not, our commission has to have its own staff of appropriations analysts who are going to follow the money. And until we have that, we have no assurance that what we want money to go to will go there and will be well spent, especially now with additional federal dollars coming.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, Cindy. So as you mentioned, you know, the title of this presentation was The Intersection of Climate and Racial Justice. And unfortunately, you know, we see, as is almost always the case, the economically disadvantaged and often minority communities are the ones that suffer worst as far as the impacts of climate change, whether it's more extreme heat or lack of infrastructure development being affected by rising sea levels here. I know you mentioned that's affecting the septic tanks and the sewage system, and the fact that we still rely on septic tanks for much of South Florida is pretty ridiculous. And of course, if the community doesn't have the tax base to fix those problems themselves, they don't get addressed, and people may no longer have safe drinking water. That in combination with climate gentrification, where we have real estate developers buying up the higher value land, which is higher elevation land, which is tends to be in those communities that are again more economically and minority based. How do you think you could address that kind of disparity at the county level?
One of the things that I had suggested earlier was identifying doing vulnerability assessments to identify the most vulnerable populations. And so I think that's a first step, is to do that. Some we know exactly where they are and that they're vulnerable because they are economically disadvantaged, and housing is deplorable in many of those areas. That's something I think, prioritizing housing and making sure that all housing stock that is under the auspices of the county meets standards of decency, because right now it doesn't. And it's almost as if it's an intentional neglect. So the county will let the housing stock become so deplorable that there's no choice but to demolish it. And then what happens? The developers come in, the vultures will come in and buy up, and then neighborhoods are displaced. And that's been going on for decades. So making it a priority to assure standards of decency. I don't know, I'm sure there are analysts who could point to some of those areas right away, and it's a matter of making sure we are investing in sustaining and preserving housing where we can. It's got to be a priority to build affordable and housing throughout the county. I think from my perspective, transit-oriented development, if we are to move forward and expand transit, then it's a win-win if we bring in the private sector and incentivize them to build more affordable housing and make it a partnership so that they are putting more housing stock where it needs to be to do double duty at having transit availability for lower income families, gives them the capacity to get back and forth to work or school or whatever the needs are. So I think that that's got to be one of our major priorities going forward.
Well, thank you. Okay, so one more question for me, and then we'll open it up. We're running a little bit behind, so I'll try to make it quick. So yes, two questions on the sort of the role of county government and holding fossil fuel companies accountable. First of all, there's been some discussion on whether or not Miami-Dade County could sue fossil fuel companies, like the city of New York has, and that we did successfully as a state against the tobacco industry for the damages caused by climate change and the fact that these companies like Exxon knew very well what the risks were 30 years ago and actively misinformed the government and the public about it. And the sort of second related question is, would you be willing to initiate some sort of audit and divestment of my county funds, that are invested, for the bonds or whatever, that to make sure that they're divested from fossil fuel companies?
So to the second question, yes, absolutely. We should have a standing policy that there would be no investment in fossil fuels. The litigation, I'm not in favor of, right, especially now. I don't think that it would be productive to engage any of our resources in litigating something like that. We're not, we don't have the level of expertise. We're not the New York level of public engagement and those kind of issues. But beyond divestment, I think to make sure that we are only investing in renewable energy in the future and making sure that whatever fossil fuels we're continuing to. I'm not going to start on Turkey Point because I could spend an hour talking about Turkey Point, but in my view, the long-term goal for Turkey Point should be that it be replaced with all solar farms throughout all that property. And we need to, they've been talking about having a new combined fuel. I don't think we want to invest in any further combined fuel. We want all solar. So I think that's where the county should be going.
Great. Well, thank you. All right, so we'll open it up to some audience questions. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the ones in the chat. But if anyone wants to ask them themselves, please raise your hand. Okay, so let's see. You have a question from Jeff, who asked, have the members of Miami's Citizens Climate met with you as they did with former Mayor Stoddard? And you answered yes.
Yes, we have. Yes, I've gone to a couple of their meetings and know Greg and Sam and John, Sam and John Van Leer really well. And Mayor Stoddard and I when we were both serving as mayor, had a lot of initiatives together. He did great things in South Miami. So we're hoping that the things that we led on will continue to move our communities forward.
Maybe you can convince him to run for office again.
Yeah.
I know he's kind of wanted to take a break for a while, which I understand. Jeff also asked what the county commission's best opportunities for emission reductions. What are some of the sort of the low-hanging fruits, so to speak, as far as achieving the most emission reductions?
So, I have been asking for a while now. I know the county did its very first greenhouse gas inventory back, I think it was like 2010. I don't know whether they've done another one or not. I keep asking and I haven't seen any results. So either they haven't done it because they know it's going to show poorly, or they did it and it does show poorly, so they aren't sharing. I don't know. I will find out. But so certainly they need to do another inventory and see how efficient all of the infrastructure that the county maintains, all of the buildings are. As I mentioned, the fleets, every fleet for every department should be electric vehicles, and they should create better infrastructure to support the public's use of electric vehicles. There should be electric charging stations at every single county facility and library and parks. Everywhere has to have electric charging stations. So I think that would help reduce footprint as well.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we have another question from Jeff, but I'll get back to him in a bit. So we have one from Sandy, who asks, in continuing the discussion of solar energy, is Miami-Dade County in a position, or can they be in a position, to incentivize residential solar panels? Realize that this is traditionally a matter for the federal government, but do you envision any way that the county can help residents financially with installing solar?
So yes, I think the county could reduce the permit fees. That would be an easy one to make it cheaper. There are now solar co-ops, and the county could assist with collaborating and publicizing and engaging with solar co-ops. I will tell you the cost of solar has gotten so much cheaper. When we put it in 2014, it's half the cost now of what it was when we installed in 2014. So it is so much more affordable, and with the financing that's available through Y-Green and different property assessed clean energy programs, you can pay it out over years instead of having to pay it up front. So, and you get it back. We no longer we've paid back. So not only has my investment in solar paid for itself, we have an electric vehicle now, so I'm using more energy to charge my electric vehicle. And it's just, I think the county needs to do a much more aggressive public service announcement campaign to encourage more people to go solar.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so one last question from Jeff. What opportunities might you foresee for helping Dade's homeless population with the predicted increase due to COVID-19 and, God forbid, hurricane damage?
So that's chronic issue, a chronic problem.